All right, the executive director of the Center for American Islamic Relations, known as CAIR, says our president's effort to ban refugees from countries plagued by terrorism is the moral equivalent to slavery. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense, but I'll let him try and explain it here.
It is not a matter of legality. It is not a matter of morality. And there is a big difference. You know, if you want to play it by law, yes, slavery was legal. It was wrong.
Comparing it to slavery? I don't even get it. Joining me right now is former CIA officer Buck Sexton and former intelligence operator Naveed Jamali. Naveed, I know you're no supporter of this ban on people from countries that sponsor terrorism. However, is this not taking it a little far here to actually compare what the president is doing? I don't even think the analogy makes any sense, but this guy from CAIR is trying to say it's like slavery. You can't defend that, can you?
I'll just say it straight. I think it's a stupid thing that CAIR said. And look, not every brown person who looks like me supports CAIR or wants CAIR to speak for them. On the flip side, not every brown dude like me is a terrorist or, in fact, isn't a loyal, patriotic American. So, look, in terms of the ban, here's what I would say, Trish, is that it's all about data. And if a country is willing to share data with us so we can vet the people that are coming in here, good on them. If they don't, and we can't do our terror watch list job, then absolutely, there should be a ban on that country coming in until they can figure out a way to share that data so we can vet them.
But look, I agree with you on that. And right now, here's the reality. And Buck, you know about this too. I mean, the reality is we can't actually vet these people. And we have been told by the CIA, by the FBI, by Homeland Security that these people cannot be vetted. The systems are not in place. ISIS has said they want to infiltrate these refugee populations with ISIS fighters. So why would we allow any of them here?
Well, all of what you said is true, and also, by the way, we've seen successful infiltrations in Europe that have led to mass casualty terrorist attacks already. So it would be to our detriment as a country not to learn from the mistakes that have already been made. They did not have proper vetting procedures in place. They took in way too many refugees too quickly in Europe. And so I think a lot of Americans and this administration see that and say, hold on a second. And by the way, that is what the purported policy or the executive order that we're going to see essentially says. It's a few month long, I think it's 120 days is what's been reported, pause looking at specific countries. I agree with what was said. We have to look at the intelligence sharing operation we have with those countries. But what we'll find in a case like Syria is that it's not
There's
sufficient.
no intelligence.
What we'll find in a case like Yemen is it's not good.
But here's the scary thing. I think we're going to find in places like Belgium and places like France, it's also not secure enough, which means that we need to also be thinking about all the visa waivers that we have in place. In other words, there are some walls that are going to go up, and it's going to be more than just Mexico, because look at poor France. I mean, you know, they've really struggled. They've really suffered. And, Buck, they can't secure their population.
All counterterrorism policies have to go through a cost-benefit analysis because none of them are perfect. So by limiting refugees from certain countries, you're not eliminating the threat of terrorism. All of their European allies cooperate with us very closely on terrorism issues, and yet there are still infiltrations that will occur. There are people that are born in those countries that are third generation that will engage in jihadist terror attacks. So none of this is perfect. It's just a question of what can we do within the law. By the way, that CAIR executive director even stated, I don't know if you meant to.
It's within the law.
It's well within the law.
No, he did say, and he was trying to make, again, that comparison to slavery, saying, well, you know, slavery was legal too. You didn't allow it because you had some moral obligation. But you want to talk about a moral obligation. I mean, for goodness sakes, then, why is he not bringing in everyone? I mean, why would we just have, you know, a few thousand?
Because we saw what happened in Germany, I think. I think that there's a lesson learned here that we have to apply to the refugees coming in specifically from some of these countries that are overrun with jihadist terrorist groups, that have whole areas that are under their control, where they're plotting and training specifically for attacks in the West, in the homeland here in America. So that's why the review, it's a review that Donald Trump is calling for, not a long-term policy.
Naveed, what's wrong with that?
I don't have a problem with that. I just want to qualify one thing. There's a vast difference between Europe and the United States. Look, Europe has unfortunately very, very porous borders, and as a result, it's much easier for people to move from Syria back and forth. The United States doesn't have that problem. I would say,
pretty porous borders.
Piggyback on what well, I mean, not in this. Look, we have two oceans separating us between the continents and here. So what I'm saying, though, is that the situation on the ground in Europe is different. Secondly, you know, the thing that does concern me, Trish, and that does keep me up at night is not so much just refugees, but rather what we've seen with radicalized or homegrown terrorists. These are people that are U.S. citizens. And one of the things that has stymied the intelligence community is the fact that if you are collecting on a legitimate target, say in Yemen, and that person picks up the phone and calls someone in Newark, New Jersey, by law, by Executive Order 12333, you cannot share that information with law enforcement.
No, you're right, Naveed. That has to change. It has to change. And you know what else? We need a whole lot more cooperation from the social media companies that see this interaction. So not just the phone companies, but the social media companies as well. And it needs to be an international effort because these people are connecting with people overseas. So for sure, I agree with you on that. You know, Donald Trump ran a campaign promising, Buck, that he could put an end to this. And he got up there on the day of the inauguration, and he promised the American people he will put an end to ISIS. You come from an intelligence background, Naveed does as well. Do you think it can be done? He's got 4 years.
I think it's important to take the point of view that there can be major strides made. I think that part of that is just in the honesty with the American people about what kind of a fight this is, that it is ideological, to name that ideology, and then to be willing to take steps within the law of the executive branch to see if, in fact, it does have a positive impact with regard to stopping terrorism in this country.
But you got to start with that premise, right? You got to understand the war that you're fighting.
You got to begin there, and it's a very difficult hand that Donald Trump has been dealt with this new administration, given what's going on in Iraq, in Afghanistan, which is greatly undercovered right now by, or not covered enough by the media, other countries where there are serious jihadi groups that are plotting against the homeland. The Trump administration is going to have its hands full. I do think they can make major strides, but this is still a multi-generational fight.
All right. So good to have you here. Buck, Naveed, thank you very much for your viewpoints.